Do you really need to track calories to lose weight? Do you need to cut out alcohol or meals out? And will actually losing that fat make you happier? I decided to try and put this to the test, where I tried to lose 5 kilograms in 5 weeks, including all of these things. I didn't track my calories. I ate out every single week, multiple times a week. I drank every single week, and I just followed 5 simple rules. If you want to see these 5 rules, the video will be somewhere around this. This is after, and this is all the insights that are going to be extremely important to learn. So during the 5 weeks, I went from this to this. Someone asked me on Instagram if I felt as if I was promoting an unsustainable result. And the kind of weird answer to this is maybe, but it was so that I could get people into maybe a longer form video like this, the ins and out of what's possible, why it's possible, and how they can do something the same, if not similar. So I actually ended up losing, I think, about 6 kilograms, which is nearly a stone in the 5 weeks. But one thing just to be aware of is I have been a coach for 10 years. I have been training for about 16. And I'm also very much aware of my happiness scale, which I'll show you in a second. I know that around 5 or 6 kilograms, if I gain that from my happiness zone, then it really starts to go down and my quality of life goes down and other things are affected. So let's watch the happiness scale video. Yes, question would be, hands up if you feel happy. Okay. Let me introduce you to the happiness scale. And I don't know why no one seems to talk about this. The first video was me at my cut-off point, where I knew I needed to sort myself out a bit, but because I'm aware of the happiness scale, I know it's only going to take me 6 to 8 weeks to get back to where I want. The problem is you don't have an awareness of where you're at in your happiness scale. Let me explain. Every single person on this planet gains weight and loses weight. It's completely normal. It could be work, social life, kids, you name it. So there's no reason to feel guilty about it. The issue is when you start falling deeper and deeper and deeper into the red zone. It takes longer and longer and longer to get to where you want to be. One thing I do know is that beyond this point, it's no longer worth it for me, for what I have to give up. So my happiness actually goes down. Once you know where you're on the happiness scale, this is a key not only to a bit of self-awareness, but to you never taking it too far on either end, because no one likes to be sad. Bye-bye. One thing I do want you to take away from the happiness scale is that it's not based on my specific physique. Everyone has a level in which they feel most happy, most content with where they're at. So do not use that as a comparison. I just know that personally, that for me, that's where I get to the point where it's not worth it. And then I also get to the point where my standards are leading me further and further and further into the red zone, and it takes longer to get back. And then it becomes overwhelming. Because the goal for everyone to maintain the results isn't to maintain a specific number, it's to maintain a level of happiness and fulfillment based on their life and trying to balance things in. And that's really what my whole goal of this was to explain to people. And I'd love to know below where you think you are in your happiness scale. I'll answer any questions if you have them. So one thing I want you to think about is the amount of weight that you can lose within a period of time. For example, I've trained a couple of fighters and we've lost, I think, close to 20 pounds, like almost overnight. So much of that was water. And we need to know that a lot of what we're doing here in any diet, because you cut out calories, in turn you probably cut out some carbohydrates, you drop a lot of water. So my body did change considerably, so it definitely was not all water. But I wanted to explain that in this video. The one thing about a diet is a diet should be done in phases. A diet shouldn't be sustainable, because a diet, if you were to be in a diet for long enough, you would die. Literally, like, the whole point in your body storing body fat is to keep you alive so that you can feed your body when you're not eating. And that's how you lose fat, because your body eats the fat stores that you have instead of the food, because you've created a calorie deficit. So fat loss phases should be done in phases, and the phases can be broken down into 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever. But it shouldn't be much longer than that, in my opinion. They should have breaks in between them. I just know that where I was in the happiness scale, I was probably only 5, 6, 7, something along those lines, weeks away from getting to where I wanted to be. So whenever you're going through a diet phase, understand where you're at in that scale. You can do it in multiple phases, take breaks in between so that you're not going backwards. Your maintenance for a period of time is actually absolutely fine. If anything, that's progress, and then you go again when your energy's back. So yeah, I did this challenge so that I could show people what was possible, because it did change considerably, and I think it's very important that you know that you can, like, in a short space of time, especially at the time of filming this, at this time of year, people do want to have quick results, and there is some rules and frameworks to follow, which I'll explain, that is going to get you there quicker without you feeling like you're super restricted. And I want to explain rules and boundaries and why these things are so important in our lives, because if you look at a real life example, imagine you were as vague as a lot of these coaches, certainly younger coaches, including myself years ago, would be, in terms of you can eat whatever you want and still lose weight as long as you're in a calorie deficit, and then they're showing you a plate of avocado and sourdough toast with an egg or something on top, and then they're showing you a McDonald's burger and saying that's better for fat loss because it's less calories. But as much as that technically on paper is true, it's so misleading and it's so confusing for people, and I think it's vastly unhelpful, if I'm perfectly honest. So you have that camp of people, but then you've got the other camp of people who are like super restrictive, and they're kind of giving you these set rules. But the kind of weird thing is their stuff tends to work more, whether that's slimming clubs, ketogenic diets, all this sort of stuff. And the reason being is it puts you into deficit. So the issue I have with all these things is not the fact that they are creating rules, and yeah, some of the rules are very questionable, but a lot of the time it puts people into deficit, they lose weight, so then they think that's the way to lose weight. Any diet works, literally any diet works. But one thing you need to realise is the fact that these rules are created by someone else, either for an agenda, especially if it's for fat loss, because ketogenic diet was actually made for people that were epileptic, right? I'm not going into that. So it shouldn't be a fat loss approach, right? So moving forward into your rules, and the reason why I created this framework was to give you some form of autonomy with your life when it comes to this side of things, because we do really need to have a set of rules in place. And if I was to give you a working or a real life example, imagine we were as vague with our rules as we are sometimes with fat loss, and we think, right, we can eat whatever we want, we can have this McDonald's instead of this. Like, it's very wishy-washy. We don't really know whether we're coming or going. We need to have a bit of structure in place with a similar amount of autonomy. And it's important that we put these things in place. But if we were to use a real life example, imagine we were to say that you were only allowed to drive your car if you weren't too drunk, right? You ask any person who's drunk, minus the guy who's lying in the corner, 9 out of 10 of those people will say they're not drunk. We're not very good. We're very good at black and white. We're not very good at the grey. So we can gravitate towards the things that in the moment are going to give us a hit of dopamine, whether that's alcohol, chocolate, you name it, and we can convince ourselves of things. But by having a set of rules, especially in a fat loss phase, it just gives you that level of autonomy, but you still are meeting your goals. So how did I end up losing that amount of weight in that short space of time? Minus the fact that I'm obviously experienced, I did genuinely just follow my own rules. I showcased it on my story every day, showcased me drinking, I showcased my weight, I showcased so much days on the plate for the first 2.5 weeks, I think of it. I showcased my full days, and then I kind of got a bit like, people don't want to see me eating a similar thing every day. But I'd done so many days on the plate to kind of showcase to people what I was actually doing. And I also had a bit of external pressure with public accountability. When I'd said I was going to do something, I wanted to follow it through so I didn't look stupid. And if you want some accountability, I don't sponsor these videos and never really plan to, because I don't want to put my name to just a random supplement company or something. Like, I've had, mainly for my Instagram, but I've had a lot of people wanting to give me exercise bikes or treadmills or whatever for posts. I just don't agree with that, because it's not my own thing. I've created this based on my own values, my own experience, and how I've helped people. So if you do want some accountability, you can apply for my coaching below. At the moment, there's a waiting list, but you'll get access to me. I'll be able to answer any of your questions on a daily basis. You'll get access to any of the group calls. You'll get access to the private community group. You'll get access to your workouts, all my recipes over the years, all my frameworks over the last 10 years, everything. The best thing about this is that takeaway that you would have had this weekend, next weekend, whatever, it's going to be less than that per month, right? Certainly at the moment, the time of filming this, might put my prices up by the time you're watching this if you're 6 months or a year down the line. But that being said, there's no contracts, and I can guarantee you that even if after a couple of months you want to leave or it's not for you, you'll regret that a lot less than that takeaway that you just felt guilty about afterwards. So you can apply below. So moving on, how I lost so much fat and how I lost so much weight. Big part of it was down to the fact that because I'd moved to Spain, my environment was different, so I was walking a lot more, because going from owning a gym to being online, like literally sitting in a grey room all day, I probably didn't get as many steps in as I used to, or definitely didn't get as many steps in as I used to. So I was walking to the gym, I was walking back from the gym, and so that was covering that pretty easily because of just adding that into my life. So if you're not going out a daily walk, I would definitely recommend that. It doesn't need to be an hour. It could be 20, 30, 40, 50% more than you're doing right now. It makes such a difference. I also wasn't mindlessly snacking and stacking up calories just by raiding the cupboards in the fridge, because the goal for this framework, which if you've watched the first video you'll have seen, was to act from a place of abundance versus a place of restriction. So you're gamifying it in such a way where you're trying to have 5 portions of protein, palm-sized, and 5 portions of fruit, 5 portions of veg. And when you're doing that and you're trying to have more, you end up having less of the other things. So naturally you create enough rules to then create a deficit. And that's the ultimate goal for this, because you're then reacting on a place of habits, because habits stick, and you're not reacting from a place of restricting your calories, like how can I manipulate my calories? That can be possible, but on a day-to-day basis, it's very exhausting. Another thing that really helped me was the power of threes rule. So if I was eating out, and if you're planning on eating out soon, this is something that I would advise to follow, because you'll naturally gravitate towards the things that are worth it and the things that aren't. So if I was to give you a brief explanation of this, there's, say, 5 things when you go out for a meal. There's your starter, your main course, your sides, your dessert, and then a drink. And if you want a couple of drinks, or you want a dessert or whatever, you'll naturally gravitate towards the things that are worth it and the things that aren't. So then you don't just become greedy and then you feel guilty about it. And it actually helps your results, because it helps with sustainability. You don't feel as if you just want to get off the wagon, and you've had the stuff that you actually want, not just the stuff that you've convinced yourself that you need. So I've not tracked my calories in years, and I just wanted to put that out there, because I think the end goal for everyone should be to stop tracking their calories eventually. As much as all my recipes and stuff are calorie tracked, the goal for any of my clients, past, present, future, would always have been to stop them eventually tracking their calories. They do need to build up some form of awareness, and I think it's a good idea to do it at the start. But once that's there, being able to put your habits in place and let that do the talking rather than being attached to an app, minus mine that's out soon, it will really hinder you, because you'll feel you're constantly off it or on it, and you're not basing it around habits, you're basing it around like a number, or if you've tracked or you've not, and it's very black and white, because we're very good at black and white. We're not so much good in the grey area, and naturally that grey area is going to be the place that's going to be best for longevity, and so you don't rebound. The biggest thing I learned from these 5 weeks was, reiterated to myself, which I think you'll learn if you do something similar to this over a 5-week period or so, is the fact that because you're trying to eat more rather than less in terms of food volume, not necessarily calories, your hunger levels change, because you're not in that restrictive mode. And because of the types of food that you're eating, lean protein, more veg, you can be very exploratory with this, with air fried veg, with burgers and stuff like that, which I showcased, more fruit. When you're trying to hit all those numbers, your hunger's down. So those mindless snackings out of boredom and hunger aren't necessarily there. Certainly the hunger isn't. And then when you're doing it, you're trying to hit certain numbers. So it's almost quite distracting for you to then mindlessly snack, because you're a lot more intentional about it. My digestion was better, and I wasn't waiting for it to end. Like I'm still kind of doing it. Okay, I'm not like counting the amount of things that I'm doing in terms of having this amount of palm-sized portions of stuff, but I definitely am making sure that I'm eating and I'm embedding that into my life. And naturally, as life happens, I'll start to slip a bit, and it's just life. Like, I've got 2 kids in businesses. I know what that's like. And we need to know that you will naturally go backwards, and that's absolutely fine. It's completely normal, even as a coach. But there should always be a cut-off point where once you get your result, that you can kind of stay within. And then it means that if you're only 6 weeks away from a holiday, you don't have to overhaul your life, and it doesn't feel so overwhelming every single year. The one thing that I did track though, and I would advise you to track during a fat loss phase, because everything should be done in phases. It shouldn't be done as an absolute. I certainly don't think you should be weighing yourself on a daily basis whenever you're not in a fat loss phase, because I think that is completely obsessive and probably not a great relationship with it. But when you completely avoid something, it then has a hold over you. And if you go based on the way that you feel, we're very emotional creatures. So whenever you go based on the way that you feel, you could be bloated that day, you could have had a bad day at work, and then you feel as if, I've screwed it up again, and then you end up in this cycle. Whereas the weight kind of grounds you, not necessarily on a day-to-day basis, but over the course of time, when you do it right, again, I've got a separate video on this that you can see, and you'll get through the free 14-day accelerator below. But you can see that natural trend, because day to day it will go up and down, and I showcased how much it done that, and a lot of it is down to the fact that whenever you maybe do have a meal out and it does have more carbs or sodium, that then holds on to water. And that's why if anyone jumps on a ketogenic or a low carb diet, they'll drop a lot of weight quickly. They're not dropping any more fat. So this is where we need to realize that whenever you're dropping weight, it will fluctuate, and it will fluctuate up and down. And if you understand these things, it kind of brings you back to just a bit of common sense, and you don't get so emotional over it. And the reason why people are emotional over the scales is because they're doing it wrong, and they're doing it at the wrong times. They're doing it once a week, and so much pressure on that one day. And they're then not doing it after like a meal out, and they go, oh, my weight shot up 2 kilos. Because for every gram of carbohydrates, you store 3 grams of water. So then you're having an extra, you have a slice of pizza, or you have a full pizza, and then you end up gaining a kilo or 2 overnight, and you think, God, I've ruined all my progress. You've not. You've just gained a lot of water and glycogen back. But that's not necessarily for this video. I just did want to give some context to it. So I did get people to track that. I did get people to track their weight. And the one thing I did look for was every 7 to 10 days, I should see a number that I've not seen before. And then I know I'm being consistent, and I'll see that downward trend. So this was the kind of after video of me doing this with full context. You get 3 options after this. Well, 4. First one, easiest one, click subscribe if you're enjoying this content. If you made it this far, that's the only thing that I ask. Second one, if you're looking for some free stuff, I've got a free 14-day starter pack, accelerator program down below where you'll get a free recipe book, calorie calculator, etc. But if you do need some accountability, then throw the takeaway in the bin this weekend. Sign up to the waiting list for my program, and whenever there's a slot, we'll get you on board, and I'll personally help you reach your goals, like you'll see on screen, like clients that have helped over the years. And lastly, maybe you just want some recipes. Recipe bundles are down below as well, 50% off. Any questions, let us know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.